This is the story of a woman who worked all night to save other people's lives, while her own financial life was quietly falling apart behind her back. She had a steady paycheck, she had a good job, and still she was drowning. If you have ever looked at your bank account and felt your stomach drop, this story is for you. Comment the word "ready" if you're prepared to hear how she turned it all around. Hit like if you believe anyone can rebuild their finances from zero, and subscribe now because by the end of this video, you will have the exact system she used to go from a credit score of 580 to owning her first home. Her name was Sarah. She was 31 years old, and she worked the night shift at a hospital in Chicago, Illinois. 12-hour shifts, sometimes 14. She would leave her apartment when the sky was still orange with sunset, and she would come home when the sky was orange again, but this time with sunrise. Her life ran backwards from everyone else's. While the city slept, she was awake, checking vitals, holding hands, watching monitors blink in the dark. She grew up in a small apartment on the South Side, raised by a single mother who cleaned office buildings at night. Sarah remembered her mother's hands, cracked and tired, and she remembered promising herself that one day she would build a different kind of life. Nursing school felt like the way out. Long nights of studying, ramen noodles for dinner, student loans stacking up quietly in the background, the way debt always does, patient and silent, waiting. By the time she graduated, she had $82,000 in student loan debt, but she had a job. A real job, with a badge and a paycheck and a title, registered nurse. She thought the hard part was over. She thought the climb was finished. She had no idea the mountain was just getting started. For 3 years, Sarah made it work, barely. Rent took a third of her paycheck, loan payments took another chunk. What was left went to groceries, gas, and the occasional bad decision that made the exhaustion feel worth it for one night. She used a credit card the way most people do when they are tired and broke, not as a tool, as a lifeline. A dinner here, a car repair there, a birthday gift she couldn't really afford. Small swipes, harmless, she told herself. She would pay it off eventually. Then came the phone call. It was a Tuesday morning right after a brutal 12-hour shift when her phone rang. It was her brother. Their father had collapsed at work. Chest pain, an ambulance, emergency surgery. Sarah's heart stopped for a second, the way it does when the ground shifts beneath you without warning. She drove straight to the hospital, still in her scrubs, hands shaking on the wheel. Her father survived, but 2 weeks later, the bill arrived. $35,000. Their insurance had a gap nobody had explained clearly, a deductible nobody had prepared for, and the hospital wanted payment. Sarah, being the one with steady income, being the daughter who always showed up, put it on her credit cards. All of it. Split across 4 different cards because no single one could hold that kind of weight. That was the moment everything cracked open. Within 6 months, her minimum payments alone were eating $900 a month, interest compounded like a slow flood filling a basement. She missed one payment because a shift ran long and she forgot the due date. Then a late fee hit. Then her interest rate jumped, the way credit card companies are legally allowed to do the moment you slip. Her credit score, which had once been an unremarkable 690, fell to 580. 580. A number that meant something different every time she tried to rent a car, apply for a new apartment, or even just get approved for a phone plan. She remembers standing in her kitchen at 4 in the morning, still in her uniform, staring at a stack of unopened envelopes. She remembers thinking, I save lives for a living, and I cannot even save my own bank account. No more, she told herself, but she didn't know what no more actually meant yet. 3 weeks after that kitchen moment, Sarah was riding the bus home after another overnight shift. Chicago in early March, cold enough that her breath fogged the window. She was too tired to sleep, but too wired to sit still, so she put in her earbuds and opened a podcast app, scrolling without really looking, the way you do when your brain just needs noise. She landed on an episode about personal finance,
not the flashy kind, promising get-rich-quick schemes. A calm voice walking through something called the debt snowball, something called credit utilization, something called an emergency fund. Sarah almost skipped it. She had heard finance talk before and tuned it out as background noise for people who already had money. But one line stopped her cold. The host said, "Your credit card is not your income. It is a contract, and right now you are losing that contract without even reading the terms." She sat up straighter on that bus. The city lights blurred past the window. 3 in the morning, empty streets, and for the first time in months, Sarah felt something other than exhaustion. She felt anger. Not at the debt, at herself for treating a financial weapon like a toy for 2 straight years. She listened to that episode twice before she got off the bus. Then she listened to another and another. Over the next week, on every commute, every break room lull, every sleepless afternoon before her next shift, she filled her ears with anything she could find about credit, about debt, about rebuilding from the ground up. It became her secret ritual. While the rest of the city slept, Sarah was awake, rebuilding her mind before she could rebuild her money. She started calling it her 3 a.m. education, because that is when it happened. That is when the noise of the world went quiet enough for her to finally hear the truth about her own finances. What she learned changed everything, and it came down to a system, not a secret, not a trick, a system built on rules that anyone could follow if they were willing to be disciplined enough to actually follow them.
The first rule was simple. Know exactly what you owe. Sarah had been avoiding her statements for months, letting the numbers blur together into one terrifying, vague shape. So she sat down one Sunday morning with every card, every balance, every interest rate written out on a single sheet of paper. 4 cards, total balance $22,000 remaining after 2 years of minimum payments, barely making a dent. Interest rates ranging from 19% to 26%. Seeing it in black and white was terrifying. It was also the first time she felt in control of it instead of controlled by it. The second rule was the Schumer box. That is the disclosure table every credit card is legally required to show you, listing the annual fee, the interest rate, the penalty terms. Sarah read hers for the first time in 3 years and realized 2 of her 4 cards were charging annual fees for rewards she never used. She called the banks. She asked directly, "Can this fee be waived?" 2 said yes on the spot. 1 offered to remove a recent late fee because of her otherwise consistent payment history. That single phone call saved her $420 that year. The third rule was the 30% line. Never use more than 30% of your available credit limit at any given time. Credit utilization, she learned, makes up nearly a third of your credit score. Sarah had been running her cards close to the max, not because she wanted to, but because she didn't understand the number was silently punishing her every single month. She restructured her spending so no single card ever crossed that line again. The fourth rule was automation as defense. She set up automatic payments for at least the minimum on every card, so a long shift or a forgotten date could never again trigger a penalty rate. Then, separately, she manually paid down as much extra as she could 2 days before each statement closing date. Because paying early, before the statement cuts, is what actually gets reported to the credit bureaus. Small technical detail, massive impact. The fifth rule, and the hardest one, was the freeze. No new debt, no exceptions. She physically removed saved card information from every shopping app on her phone. If she wanted something, she had to type in 16 digits by hand. And that tiny friction, she said later, saved her more money than any budgeting app ever could. 14 hours a week she had been losing to disorganized finances, in wasted interest, in fees, in stress that bled into her sleep and her shifts. 14 hours a week, 60 hours a month, 730 hours a year. That is 3 full months of her life gone, paying a tax for simply not understanding the rules of the game. The first month was brutal. Sarah cut everything down to essentials. She meal prepped instead of ordering food after long shifts, even when her body begged for the easy comfort of delivery.
She sold furniture she didn't need. She picked up an extra shift every other week, even though her body screamed for rest. She cried in her car more than once, gripping the steering wheel, wondering if any of it was even working. By day 20, something shifted. Her first statement came in showing a real dent in her balance, not just a minimum payment disappearing into interest. For the first time, more of her money was attacking the principal than feeding the bank. It was a small number. It felt enormous. By month 3, she had paid off her smallest card completely. She took the payment she used to send there and rolled it into the next card, the same way a snowball gathers more snow as it rolls. Debt snowball, just like the podcast said. Momentum was starting to feel real. By month 6, her credit utilization had dropped so far that her score crossed 650. She remembers checking her credit app in the hospital break room and gasping loud enough that a coworker asked if everything was okay. By month 12, 2 of her 4 cards were paid off entirely. Her score crossed 700. She started building a small emergency fund alongside her debt payments, 3 months of expenses first, because she never again wanted one bad phone call to send her back into that spiral. By month 18, she was debt-free on every credit card except one, which she was paying down aggressively, and her score touched 740. And by month 24, 2 full years after that 3 a.m. bus ride, Sarah's credit score reached 660. All 4 cards paid in full. An emergency fund covering 6 months of expenses, sitting untouched in a high-yield savings account, and something she never thought possible when she was crying in her kitchen over unopened envelopes, she qualified for a mortgage. Not just any mortgage. Because her score was so strong, she locked in an interest rate 1.5% lower than the market average for buyers with damaged credit. Over a 30-year loan, that difference will save her more than $120,000. $120,000 saved simply because 2 years earlier she chose to listen to a podcast instead of falling asleep on a bus.
She bought a small 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of Chicago. The first thing she did after closing was sit on the empty living room floor and cry. The good kind of crying this time. The kind that comes after you've carried something heavy for a very long time and finally get to set it down. Here is what I need you to understand, my friend. A credit card is not evil. It is not the enemy. It is a tool. And like any tool, it can build something beautiful or it can tear your life apart, depending entirely on whether you understand how it works. Most people are handed this tool with 0 instructions and then blamed when they cut themselves on it. That ends today, for you, right now, watching this. Purpose. That is what Sarah found on that bus. Not just information, purpose. The decision that she was done being a passenger in her own financial life. I want to give you the same 3 steps that changed everything for her, stripped down to what actually matters. Step 1. Write down every single balance and interest rate you have today, not tomorrow, today. You cannot fix what you refuse to look at. Step 2. Call every single one of your creditors this week and ask directly if any fee can be waived or any rate can be lowered. The worst answer you will ever get is no, and no costs you nothing. Step 3. Set your utilization rule right now. Never let your balance cross 30% of your limit. And automate your minimum payments so a busy week never becomes a costly mistake. That is it. That is the system. It is not complicated. It is not secret. It simply requires you to actually do it every single day, especially on the days you don't feel like it. If this story moved you even a little, hit that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach someone else who needs to hear it tonight. Comment below and tell me your current credit score.
No judgment here. We have all started somewhere. Sarah started at 580. Share this with the one friend you know is drowning in credit card debt right now, because sometimes the thing that saves someone is not a lecture. It is a story that sounds just enough like their own. And subscribe, because every week we are going to keep building this path together, one honest, practical step at a time. Somewhere in this city tonight, there is someone riding the bus home from a job that exhausts them, wondering if their life will ever look different. My friend, it can. It started for Sarah with one podcast episode at 3 in the morning. It can start for you right now with the choice you make the moment this video ends.